Welcome back to Stockyard Sessions, the podcast where we bring you stories from the people shaping the future of agriculture. I'm Victoria Lawrence, and it's been such a privilege to be your host and to have the opportunity to share so many great conversations with you. Things are evolving here at Atlas, and I'm excited to share the hosting reins with someone you may already know.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Mosley. I'm really excited to be joining you as a more regular voice here on Stockyard Sessions. I've loved listening to the conversations that Vic has had with farmers, innovators, and people across the industry. So I'm really excited to carry that on and hopefully bring plenty of new stories and perspectives to the podcast.
So while there might be a new voice joining you more regularly, the idea behind Stockyard Sessions stays the same. Great conversations with great people and plenty of stories from across Australian agriculture. Emily, I think it's time we let you take it from here.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. In today's episode of Stockyard Sessions, I'm joined by Dorianne Coventry, Director of Investor Relations at Impact Ag Australia. From Wall Street to wool growing, Dorianne's career has spanned global institutional finance, commercial agriculture, and farming. It's a journey that has led her to make the move to regional Australia, where today she and her husband Charlie run a commercial beef and ultra-fine merino wool enterprise near Armidale in New South Wales. Alongside life on the land, Dorianne connects institutional investors with opportunities that deliver strong commercial returns while supporting sustainable agriculture and natural capital outcomes. She's also deeply committed to regional communities, serving as the first female president of Ag Edge and as the director of the Armidale School Foundation Board. In today's conversation, we're talking about taking risks, redefining success, balancing family, farming, and a professional career, and why the future is full of opportunity for women on the land. Dorianne, welcome to Stockyard Sessions.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
Pleasure. It's lovely to have you on. We'll get into it. So before agriculture became such a central part of your life, you were building a really successful career on Wall Street. Was finance always the path that you imagined for yourself, or did you have completely different dreams growing up?
Finance was not necessarily always the path I imagined myself. Agriculture was never a path I imagined for myself. No, growing up, my father's a urological surgeon, and I was actually really interested in medicine growing up, and still am as a, daughter of a doctor. I overrate my medical skills, but no, finance became something that became of interest to me, really during university. And it's probably pretty practical reasons, but there are also some community and social reasons behind my interest in finance. So I like numbers. I was good at numbers. I wanted to accomplish a few things with my career. I wanted to be able to live independently financially. And I mean independently from having to live with my parents or rely on my parents at all. And then also in terms of a relationship, I always wanted to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. And so I was lucky enough to have parents that set me up with conversations with some of their friends who had interesting career paths. And I spoke with a number of people across all different kinds of industries. But at that stage, I knew that I could process numbers. I knew I understood the share market. And I knew that I would be able to make enough of an income to be able to be an independent woman financially. The other thing that attracted me to finance, which might be a little bit surprising, but because I think a lot of people go into finance purely for numbers, there's a bit of a game to it as well, which can be a little bit of fun. But actually, the other thing that really attracted me to it is I had a mentor at the time who talked about being able to make a real difference to other people in terms of their financial prosperity. And so by investing other people's money, because that's what we do in finance, we invest other people's money, I felt I was in a position to be able to help people like my mother and father and my grandparents who were saving for retirement to be able to maximize their quality of end of life and their financial trajectory. And so I guess I went into it for 2 reasons. One was to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish for myself. And the second was financially. And the second was to help other people.
That's a beautiful story, Dorianne. I feel like you've summarized that really, really well. And it's all led you now to forge a career across institutional finance, and as we'll learn through our conversation today, agriculture and farming as well. So what does a day in your life look like now?
Well, from 6 a.m. until 8:30 a.m., I would probably qualify it as chaos with 3 children at home. They're older now, so it's getting a little bit better, but there is still very much the last minute, can't find my shoes, can't find my socks. I'm running late. Can you make me breakfast? All while trying to get myself organized and sorted for the day. But you just learn to take all that in stride. Nothing really phases you. And like stress levels, I have found since becoming a working parent actually have reduced in a lot of ways, because the small stuff that used to kind of really I would find stressful, I don't find stressful anymore. You stop sweating the small stuff. So it's pretty chaotic first thing in the morning. I will start work anywhere between 7:30 and 9, depending on how early the kids go off to school and what I have on at the office. I certainly think as a working parent, particularly as a working mom, and I work 4 days a week. So I'm very conscious of how lucky I am to have a role that I can have some work-life balance. So I go hard when I'm at work. So there's not usually a lunch break, not usually coffee with friends or anything else. Then head down, bum up, really getting stuff done. And some of that is sort of the day-to-day tasks and deadlines that need to be met. And then some of that needs to be carved out to strategic planning and strategic thinking, which is actually a bit harder to plan into your day, but a really important discipline to have. And then the day wraps up at about 5 o'clock when it's time to collect kids and start the evening chaos, which is dinner, homework. It was really important to me on a personal point of view, once I had children, it was really important to me to try to be there as much as I can to provide the emotional support and guidance that they need. And that gets, as they get older, it becomes even more of a thing. They say that the problems are fewer, but they're bigger. So, the evening is debriefing, chatting about days, chatting about just giving children space to, I guess, talk about what's on their mind. And then on many evenings, there might be another hour or two of work that happens after all that is sorted and kids are sort of getting into bed. But I do find an early to bed is really important for me as much as possible to keep the energy levels going, to keep doing that over and over. Because the other thing about being a parent is that your weekend also gets consumed with kids' activities. So, and between work, kids, and a farm, which I think we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, but there's not a lot of downtime. So I've really learned the hard way that pacing myself by getting enough rest at night is important to keep me going long term.
Absolutely. You've got a lot going on. And I certainly admire, your dedication across professionally, your career, your family, life on the land. And I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to as well. I'd love to dive into your career and that journey a little bit more. Your career has taken a path that many people might not actually expect. Can you tell me a little bit about that journey?
I think I can summarize by saying it wasn't by design. I followed a path of adventure and I guess maybe open-mindedness and love. And that's what's kind of landed me where I am. So I originally started working actually as a fixed income trader for a company in Boston. I then went into equities analysis on the buy side. So analyzing equity stocks and putting them forward to a portfolio management team for investment. I then went into relationship management. So being the person who translates between portfolio management and large clients. So we're talking, $500 million and up, large pension funds and corporate clients, which led me to, and that was in New York City on Wall Street. And I did a lot of work with our Sydney office when I was in New York. And the head of the Sydney office, who's a wonderful person and still a friend and mentor to this day, approached me about a job in the Sydney office, which was at the time I was 23 years old, maybe 24. It was a promotion opportunity. It was sort of, an opportunity to expand my horizons. I was raised on the values of international travel, learning what you can from everyone you meet. And I felt that this was a really great opportunity to do that. So I came to the Sydney office for Lazard Asset Management, which is where I worked at the time, and loved the office, loved the team, really loved Australia. It was hard. I'm very close with my family, and I struggled with the distance and the lack of alignment of time zones. That was really tough at the time, but I could see that this opportunity to sort of learn and expand my horizons would be really valuable to me. I didn't expect to meet my husband, who I was introduced to by a mutual friend. And we met, and he's a 6th-generation wool farmer from Armidale. And not long into our relationship, we came to his family farm in Armidale. I think it was the middle of winter. Well, I know it was the middle of winter. His father was out of town. I don't think the heater was on in the house. And you can imagine Armidale winters with no heat. I remember I could see my breath inside the house. And it was a real culture shock for me at the time. My exposure to agriculture and farming was very limited. So, I had gone on a couple of, they call them dude ranches in the States. Like, you go for this sort of city slicker experience on a farm. My mother's side of the family, I have to say, is agricultural, but I hadn't actually had a lot of direct experience with it. And it overwhelmed me at the time. And we drove on the drive back to Sydney. I was really questioning, listen, I think I'm heading back to New York City, and I think you're probably heading there. And I don't know that this is, maybe we should just call it quits while we're ahead. And he did not have to work very hard. I have to say we were pretty head over heels for each other at the time. And just to say, listen, let's just see what happens. Just to stick with it for a little bit. And then pretty soon after that, we were in too deep and in love, and we got engaged and got married, living in Sydney. And I had a conversation with him at the time about, listen, I think that your family you probably, might need to move to the farm. I just want to be really clear with you. I'm not moving to the farm. Just so we're really clear. Like, this is my hard boundary. Like, that didn't work out. It's worked out but it's worked out way better. Like way better than holding that boundary. So I continued working for Lazard while we lived in Sydney. We had our 3 children in Sydney. I realized pretty quickly that, and I have so much respect for working professional women who are able to find a really great balance between completely killing their career and parenting. I also have so much respect for working professionals who decide that they don't want to go back to their career. It's really a personal thing for everyone. What I found at the beginning was that I wasn't going to be able to continue on the career trajectory that I was on and be the parent that I wanted to be. So that was just, like I said, my personal lived experience. With the benefit of hindsight, part of me wishes that I'd gone harder on the career front, but I also, at the end of the day, know how important it was for me to be able to focus on my children for a little bit. So I continued working for Lazard in a part-time capacity in Sydney. And then again, never moving to the farm. But we spent a lot of time up in Armidale on weekends because by that stage, Charlie had taken over running the farm. So we were probably here, 1 or 2 weekends a month. And I started to get to know the local community here, which is, I think, representative of much of rural, regional, and remote Australian communities. These communities are exceptional, and there are just exceptional people. And I really fell in love with the community and started to understand that it maybe wasn't as scary as I thought it was originally. I think when I first came, it was scary, it was overwhelming. But realized that actually there are a lot of really interesting, sophisticated people doing really interesting, sophisticated things and inspiring things, and also salt of the earth. And I really liked that. So we spent the next 10 years living in Sydney, but we knew at that stage that if the right career opportunity came up in Armidale, that we would like to raise our children on the land. And we were very lucky that an opportunity came up. Well, two opportunities came up. So one is a joint venture that we did on the farm with Xenia, which we can talk about. And the other one was an opportunity for my husband to join a grain trading business. At that stage, we had 3 little kids. Our second 2 were born very close together. So it was also a good opportunity for me to take a couple of years at home with them, which I'm really grateful that I did. But that probably allowed me to get to know agriculture. Moving to the farm, being home with children on the farm full time, really let me start to understand agriculture and just how amazing and complex and rewarding it is. So shortly after my youngest started school, I was lucky enough to join a company called Terra Protein Equity Partners, which is a corporate advisory business helping agricultural and ag tech businesses grow. It's a global business based out of Edinburgh. I worked for a really wonderful person and friend named Hamish Webb, who now owns a business called Precision Pastures. And that was a really fascinating, interesting way to start to marry agriculture and the finance background that I had. And that was a really wonderful experience. And then a few years later, I was lucky enough to join Impact Ag. I started at Impact Ag as a advisor, doing a wool advisory project, and then was brought on as the director of investor relations, which is kind of full cycle back to what I was doing when I was at Lazard and Wellington in Boston, New York, and Sydney. So that's my career journey. And it does, you're right, it sounds really dramatic, but it was really just about, like, I would say, following my gut, understanding my values, and making sure that the decisions I was making reflected those values. Because we'll talk about Ag Edge in a little bit, but there are topics that come up at Ag Edge, particularly amongst the younger women who are members, about life decisions and how do you know if you're making the right choice? How do you know if you're going to have regrets? And the reality is, as long as you understand your values and you can directly link the key decisions that you make in life back to your values, you're not going to get everything right and you're going to make mistakes. And many decisions in life are literally jumping and just thinking, I think there's a net there. I hope it appears, right? So you just don't know. But if you can ground it in your values, then you can always have confidence that you're making the right choices for you at the time. Benefit of hindsight, maybe different choices should have been made. I don't feel that way in my case on the big things, but it was just this journey was following my gut, following my values, and sort of being open to adventure.
And it's a beautiful journey of love and learning. And I love that that's all been grounded in your values as well. Looking back now, has the journey changed the way that you think about work, success, and life?
Oh, 100%. Working on Wall Street was an incredible education experience for me. It was cutthroat. There were sharp elbows. It was very transactional. You know, when you're in New York City, if you are not performing to an absolutely excellent standard, there is someone waiting right behind you to push you to the side and step into your role. So it's intense. And I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to marry a standard of excellence that I learned from that, and work ethic and hard work that I learned from New York, with maybe a less transactional, but more community and values-based life. That's not to say that agriculture is not exciting and intense and competitive. Like, we all know what margins can be like in agriculture. There's not a lot of room for errors. But the life that I've ended up in, where I can manage the balance to a certain degree between family and work, is really valuable to me.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'd love to dive into more of that story about life on the land and what that looks like for you now. You and your husband run a commercial beef and ultra-fine merino operation, while you're also pursuing your professional career as well. What does balancing those two worlds look like day to day?
So it's really tricky. It's really tricky to balance. Part of the great thing about agriculture is that kids can be involved with it. So the weekend work kids can come out for advice to my younger self would be, if you think about work-life balance as a darts game with a bullseye in the middle, you're never actually going to hit the bullseye. You never get the balance right in any single decision that you make. Some weeks the farm takes precedence over everything else. Some weeks Impact Ag Australia, and for many weeks in a row, Impact Ag Australia takes precedence over anything else. And sometimes your kids take precedence over anything else. And the winning formula is that over time, if you think about that target in like a quadrant, and each quadrant is each aspect of your life. So it's personal care for myself. It's time with my husband. I'm going to have more than 4. It's time with my children. It's Impact Ag Australia. It's the farm. And all of those are really important. The hope is that over time, you're never going to hit the target, the bullseye. So you hope over time that it sort of averages to somewhere close to the center. So there are times where you feel like you're doing everything poorly. And a lot of times you feel like you're doing everything poorly, but you kind of have to go helicopter view and look over a longer time horizon and try to make sure that sort of balance is in place. But definitely my husband is a really hard worker. So that helps. And the kids are being taught those hard work values of growing up on the land. And I really appreciate that. And the way that we work together is I take up the slack at home and he takes up the slack for farm work, essentially.
And it's no small feat to juggle all of those priorities. And I can imagine through that journey, you've had to maybe reevaluate what some of those priorities look like and how those values show up for you day to day. I'd love to understand, has it changed your definition of success and ambition?
Definitely. One of the things that I love about working at Impact Ag Australia is that I'm back to doing that job of that finance numbers, helping other people make money. That's really, really important to me. I want to help people be financially successful. And then you get to do so much more on top of that in agriculture because you get to feed and clothe the world. Australia has an amazing, established and reliable natural capital market. So that's soil carbon, environmental vegetation carbon, environmental planting, biodiversity. So then on top of doing those things, you also get to have this, you're a custodian of the earth, of nature, and you get to actually contribute to the improvement of nature. So if I look back, if I had just stayed in New York, I think my life would have probably stayed a little bit more transactional and a little bit more on that sort of, gerbil wheel. And I love that where I've landed allows me to, and Impact Ag Australia's model allows me to contribute.
Yeah, I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful way to look at it as a custodian of nature. And I know that your husband and yourself are involved with a company called Xenia. And that connects Australian wool producers directly with a global luxury brand. Why is that relationship significant and how has that impacted your own business?
That has been an amazing opportunity for Charlie and me. So we are the only end-to-end supply chain joint venture in superfine merino wool that I'm aware of. And what I mean by that is there are other connections on the wool supply chain, which are amazing. But Xenia actually bought part of the farm from us. So we actually co-own it. Now, that might not last for forever, but for the time being, it has enabled us to get a really clear lens on the other end of the supply chain to understand what they're looking for, what they want, what trends are happening. What I noticed having not come from farming and coming into it, it is such a individual, lonesome, isolated role, really, and particularly in the wool industry, there can be that lack of connectivity with the other end of the supply chain. So that's one of the benefits it's added. The second benefit it's added is that we've had this amazing brain in our business partner, Paolo Xenia, who's been on our board and working on our farm and helping us to navigate some really strategic decisions. So we've and the third thing that it's brought is capital. So essentially our 10-year plan for improvement on the farm, we were able to do in 2 years, plus a few other things that we weren't planning on at the time. But
Yeah, wow.
shortly after the joint venture started, we hit that terrible drought in 2018. It was the worst drought on record in this area by 130%. It was something indescribable to somebody who's never experienced it. The earth wasn't even brown, it was gray. There was nothing. And part of the challenge of going through those drought cycles is just you just don't know when it's going to end. So it's very difficult to back your decisions, even though you're forced to make decisions throughout. But with no crystal ball to know when it's going to end, it's impossible to know whether those decisions are good or bad. And Paolo was very good at helping us navigate that. Charlie was very good at that. My husband was very good at that anyway. But having a second opinion in there was really great. And the other thing that came out of that drought was we invested significant capital in future-proofing our farm. So we put in some very large dams that are gravity fed down to some pivot systems that we can use for silage. We installed a bore, which we can pump to the dams. We improved our fencing. I think we quintupled our number of paddocks.
Wow.
So really all about ensuring that our farm is in the best possible position for the next generation. And I think that's a really big mentality shift that I wasn't, just to go on a little tangent, but that was a really big mentality shift that I hadn't been exposed to before marrying into an agricultural family, is that it's actually not about you. It's about being custodians of the land and being custodians of an asset to pass on to the next generation. And so there's a real kind of lack of ego and self-centeredness that comes with that type of lifestyle that I really love and find inspiring. And I apologize, it was a little bit of a tangent, but so what Xenia has brought to us is an amazing brain to help us drive our business, capital, and a really clear a more clear understanding of the other end of the supply chain.
Absolutely. And you've got such a wonderful wealth of knowledge and experience from your background in Wall Street and now your experience in running a commercial operation at Armidale as well. You're leveraging those skills into a number of different leadership opportunities. And one of those is actually that you've become the first female president of AgEdge, as well as serving on a number of community boards. What did that milestone mean to you personally?
Yeah, so I might just start by just telling you what AgEdge is, because I think that's an important part of the picture. So AgEdge is a reciprocal group of advisors for family farming businesses. It tends to attract medium to large scale family farming businesses who are progressive, because it's essentially a formal board. So on a quarterly basis, you're running your financials, you're sharing those with your board. You're doing a goals and vision setting process. You're sharing those with your board. Each board is made up of between 5 and 6 members, and it's the same board that you meet with every quarter. So there's some crossover between the other boards as an organization, but we've got 5 members on our board at the moment, and we've been meeting with them for as long as we've all been in AgEdge, with a little bit of turnover in there. And it's an incredibly valuable tool for us as isolated farmers to be able to tap into a brain's trust of other inspiring farmers who've been there, done that, lived that, and can help guide you in your decision-making journey, because we all know how complex farming is. Also, because family farming includes the family component, right? It's not just a business that you're running. It's you wake up in the morning and you're looking at your business every day. You have some extra cash in the bank account. Is that going to be allocated to the new tractor has ROI and is going to increase productivity by X%? Or has your family been living in, has your family of 6 been living in a 2-bedroom cottage with a kitchen built in 1952 that really needs upgrading? And so that finding that balance between the lifestyle and the transactional component of agriculture has been a huge value add for AgEdge. And that's one of the reasons that AgEdge really helped us very quickly think through and enable us to do this joint venture with Xenia. So when the opportunity came on, we had an emergency meeting with our AgEdge board, and they brought us back to, again, our goals, visions, our values, and helped us decide whether or not first it was something that was for us, and then helped us navigate the negotiation process. So In terms of becoming the first female president of Ag Edge, it's probably not something that I set out to do. In fact, I think it wasn't until after I was elected that someone was like, "Oh, you're the first female president." It wasn't really and I don't really think of the world in that way. I don't sort of try to conquer gender roles or anything like that intentionally, but it's probably a little bit more organic. And I'm really proud of being the first female president of Ag Edge. I think there'll be more female presidents of Ag Edge. I mean, certainly because Ag Edge brings both husband and wife and sometimes the next generation of kids to the table, there are a lot of seriously badass, smart women in this organization. So I hope I'm the first of many. I think what I really like about being president is that I'm able to give back to Ag Edge. We're a very low fee structure, so we're nonprofit. So we charge $5,500 a year. There's other competitors in the market that charge, quadruple that are a for-profit model. We're a non-for-profit model, so we really pride ourselves on keeping our fees low, but we still have professional facilitation. So I think just being in a position where I can help contribute and help Ag Edge continue to grow and thrive is something that's really exciting to me.
Amazing. And with everything that you've got going on, juggling your career, your family, the farm, what motivates you to invest your time in leadership outside of your day job?
It's the drive to give back, to give to community, to help meet interesting people, learn everything I can from them. Two of my biggest inspirations are my father and my old boss. And there are two of them. My husband is one of them, and there's many others. But two of my biggest inspirations in the world have had some really interesting perspectives on learning, being a perpetual student. My father always says, when you meet someone new, don't judge them, just see what you can learn from them. And when you get into these positions of leadership, you put yourself in a room with some pretty interesting, smart, inspiring people, and there's so much to absorb. There's so much to learn. So yeah, it would be two things. It would be that community and giving back, and opportunities to learn.
Yeah, I love that. Dorianne, when you think back to the younger version of yourself starting out on Wall Street, what do you think she'd be most surprised to learn about where life has taken you?
She didn't even know that a farm outside of Armidale, or like a rural community outside Armidale. She didn't even know Armidale existed. So, I mean, she would be surprised that a place like this even exists. She would be shocked that she's ended up on a farm, because her perspective on farms, I don't want to be rude when I say this, but it was very, farming was perceived to be unsophisticated, maybe not that smart. And I was so wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. And I have a full appreciation for that now, particularly in Australia, where you have really sophisticated operations dealing with very complex weather patterns and environments, and some scale. But yeah, I think she'd be really shocked that she's ended up living. I know from Australian standards, where I live isn't in the middle of nowhere. I'm 35 kilometers from a regional town of 25,000 people. But compared to where I grew up, I live in the middle of nowhere. And I think she'd be really surprised that I ended up there and that I love it. And I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
That's beautiful. And finally, just to close our conversation today, what excites you most about the future for women in agriculture? And what advice would you leave with the young women listening who might be considering a career in the industry?
So I think agriculture across the board is incredibly exciting. We are on a global trajectory. We have a growing population globally. We have global warming and climate change. Food and fiber production is back to basics. Oh, we have an AI generation coming through, which is going to change things fundamentally. But at the end of the day, you have to have food and fiber to sustain the human race. So that is becoming more and more important. And I think that fundamentally makes Australian agriculture a potentially huge growth space from a careers and development point of view. In terms of the women component in that, It's interesting. I'm part of a group here in Armidale. There's 3 women who got together to have a Rural Women's Day lunch in October last year, which we had in the wool shed on our farm, which Charlie and I renovated a couple of years ago. And we're now having, it's a working wool shed, but we actually also hire it out for event space. I think it was 180 or 200 women and men in the wool shed for the Rural Women's Day lunch. And the topic was, what excites you about the future of women in agriculture or rural women? I think technology is enabling women to have it all. I say that you can't have it all. Like, let's be really clear. Nobody has it all. And you can't have it all especially if you're a parent and you're working. It doesn't exist. So Georgie Somerset spoke at this lunch and talked about seasons of life and marrying those with your career and your work-life balance. And I couldn't agree more with what she said. But I think that technology is really enabling women to participate from regional and remote areas. I think ag tech is an incredibly exciting space for innovation. Certainly the culture of agriculture in Australia, which maybe historically has been a bit more male-dominated, is changing, and it's changing quickly. There are some incredibly smart, capable women coming through leadership positions in agriculture in Australia. So I think it's almost like the world is your oyster for women in agriculture. You can do what you want with it. I think it wasn't until, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was only in the late 1900s that women could actually be qualified as farmers. It's a recent change, and it's happening really quickly. So in terms of advice to leave with young women considering a career in the industry, don't hesitate. Go for it. I think it is the next really exciting growth industry. I think you can have a work-life balance. I think you can connect with nature. You can be custodians of the land. You can be custodians of the environment, and you can really contribute to the world, and you can make some money while you're doing it. So I don't know what's better than that. Like, is there anything that can compete with that?
Absolutely. Dorianne, thank you so much for joining us today. Your journey is a wonderful reminder that careers don't have to follow a predictable path, and that some of the biggest opportunities come from being willing to embrace change. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us, your insights, and your passion for agriculture.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining me for the Stockyard Sessions podcast, proudly brought to you by Atlas Ag, the team behind Atlas Carbon and Atlas Grazing. If you enjoyed this conversation, we'd love it if you subscribed to the podcast, shared this episode with a friend or a colleague, or left us a review. It really helps us continue bringing you conversations with the people shaping the future of Australian agriculture. To learn more about how you can optimise your own grazing operation through better pasture health, stronger livestock performance, and increased soil carbon, visit atlasag.com.